All right, today we're going to talk about spotting scopes for precision rifle fire correction applications. Now, the first thing to really consider here in our discussion is that there are a lot of different applications that spotting scopes are really marketed for. Not everyone is doing long-range precision rifle shooting. So keep that in mind when we're talking about this, because if we're not talking about your favorite spotting scope, it's not that we hate it or that it's a piece of junk. It's just that we are looking for something very specific. A lot of people do bird watching. Other people might watch sports. Some people might do videography or camera work, photography through their spotting scope. We are going to be using it for our application, which is kind of unique. And thus, we're going to require kind of a narrow set of selection criteria. And we'll walk you through the process here and give you a good idea of what you can do best with your money that you have to get this job done. Now, when we're talking about spotting for long-range precision rifle fire, we're talking about something that's going to require a decent quality glass, okay? And you don't necessarily need to spend $1 million to get that, but we are looking for very, very subtle variations in atmosphere called bullet trace. When your bullet's flying through the atmosphere, it's going to be creating a vapor trail, and this can be very hard to see because it's very small, it's quick moving, and you have to have the spotting scope set up just perfectly in order to get in line with it. And it is something that if you have inferior glass quality where you're zooming in on optical aberrations and is blurry, you're looking for a slight blur in a blurry background, because we're talking about 1,000 meters or more sometimes. And at 1,000 meters, you're going to have a little bit of mirage. So the atmosphere is going to be distorting your picture right off the bat. And now you're looking for a variation in that distortion when we're talking about spotting bullet trace. So you're going to need to have a very clear view of the atmosphere at the point of the max ordinate that the bullet is passing through. So with all those things in mind, you're going to need decent quality glass. You're going to need a means to focus in with precision on a very narrow window. And also, after that bullet strikes, you're going to need to determine an angular correction to give to your shooter so that he can adjust fire. And in order to do that, you're going to have to be equipped with a reticle in your spotting scope in units of mils or minutes of angle to match the shooter's rifle scope so that you can give him applied hold off to correct for his rifle shot.
Send it exactly one more like that.
All that being said, that kind of really narrows down our choices for our application of spotting scopes that I would recommend. Now, I also have been on the other side of this too. When I was a kid, I could not afford decent glass. I had to make do with what I had. And if you can't afford real decent glass, there are some options that will kind of get you started. And really, any spotting scope you have will give you a lot better idea of what's going on downrange than nothing. So if you set up a standard hunting spotting scope or something cheap under $100 that you found at a garage sale, whatever you have, you will probably be able to identify bullet splash when you kick up a dust signature, especially in arid conditions, and you'll have some kind of idea of which general direction you're going to correct by. However, if you're going to be doing this for more of a serious hobby, or if you're going to be doing this professionally, especially if someone's life depends on it, you're going to want to make sure that you have a decent piece of equipment, and this video is going to get you narrowed in on what you're looking for. So really, on the low end of the spectrum, if you are extremely limited in funds and you have to buy a cheap spotter, there's only really a couple options you have. You can either get a hunting spotting scope and make do with what you have, a sporting optic, something you get at the sporting goods store that does not have a ranging reticle, and you can then just better learn the ability of discerning how much that rifle bullet missed by just by using the spatial perception in your mind, and then converting that into an angular correction using a mil.dot master or a calculator and giving that to your shooter. That requires a lot of practice and a lot of skill. So you can get away with doing that, but just be advised that you're going to need to practice a lot in order to be successful just calling it on the fly. You can get pretty inexpensive spotting scopes equipped with a reticle. However, the quality is going to be very low. If you look at a Barska, they make an 11 to 33 power spotter with a 50 millimeter lens. It's their tactical spotter. And this one does have a mil-cross reticle. So if you need an entrance level optic, this is the cheapest one that I could find that looks like it has the feature set that we're looking for. So this Barska tactical spotter should kind of get you on target for beginners. Another quick word here on inexpensive spotting optics. If you do opt to use a sporting scope, such as your typical hunting spotting scope or whatever you're using, be advised that magnifications much over 20 power, over 30 power are going to be kind of useless on low quality glass. And for those of you who have stumbled around with cheap spotting scopes, you probably know what I'm talking about. You simply, after a certain point, are zooming in on optical aberrations, a blurry image. You're simply amplifying the blurriness, and you're actually not seeing anything any more clearly. So if you're using a low quality optic, maybe something around the order of 20 power magnification is more than plenty to get you started. You could even use a rifle scope if you wanted to do it that way, and you could try to get it situated in a way where you could orient it in a tripod, or a mil-dot rifle scope can even kind of work to double as a spotting scope for you. I wouldn't recommend using a rifle scope as a spotting scope if you're laying behind the shooter. That's just a little bit dangerous, I suppose. So it is preferable to have the scope off of there. If you do have to use a rifle scope with the rifle attached for spotting applications, you're going to want to probably get a little more off to the side. That's not near as good for actually seeing the bullet trace. However, you don't want to blow the other guy's face right off. So try to avoid that if you can. Take that rifle scope off and use it as a spotting scope. Now, if you have a couple $100, you can afford a decent quality spotting scope. The Leupold Green Ring Sequoia has a scope in 20 to 60 power. And this is a scope, they're $300-$400 usually if you can find them, that has decent glass quality. And you can get usable magnification up, upwards of 40 power. And so this thing will work fine. However, the limitation here is I do not think these are available with a reticle. And like we said before, if you're going to be correcting rifle fire, that reticle is like extremely important to have. And there are millions of other good sporting style spotting scopes that will work in a similar way to this. Just be advised, they will take a little more practice if you don't have a reticle. For the first option of reticled spotting scopes that I can think of that will work good for you for tactical applications like we're talking about, US Optics does make a spotter that has a reticle, and I do believe it's right around $1,000. And that is a decent piece of glass. It's not tier 1 glass, but it's real decent. But US Optics does have one in the $1,000 range. If you're looking for something a little more nice that's still kind of affordable, and this might not seem affordable to you guys, but you can look at the Vortex HD Razor series. The Razor is kind of their higher end spotting optic. Vortex is a company that's getting more popular nowadays. And in a spotting scope, this is not a bad way to go because it is available with an upgraded eyepiece, which is a 30 power MRAD ranging reticle. It's a hash mark ranging reticle using MRAD based subtension lines for ranging holdover and windage corrections. So this is going to be real slick. The way this reticle is set up is as kind of a crosshairs oriented a little bit down and a little bit to the left so that the center of the lens is available for placing your target there, and you'll see your bullet trace approaching the target through the center of the lens without the obstruction of the reticle. After you identify where the bullet has splashed down, then you can use the reticle to determine your hold-off correction value to send over to your shooter. So this is a real slick way to go, and the reticle design is not bad at all. That's not a bad option. Looking at the scope, it has a real nice fine adjustment to it, and the glass quality is surprisingly good for a scope of this quality, with the price only being $1,500 to get started. It does use high density glass, the HD glass. A lot of people have marketed that as high definition glass, which is kind of correct, but it's really talking about high density glass, which is apochromatically corrected lenses, which adjust all three different color wavelengths into the same focal plane, which is what gives you that really sharp image, which is going to enable you to actually see your bullet trace. So if you're looking for bullet trace for these applications, HD glass is highly recommended. And you're going to have to spend at least $1,000, a lot of times upwards of $2,000 to get decent quality HD glass. And there's lots of different recipes of glass. There's crystalline fluorite, there's lead-based glasses. Lots of different recipes can accomplish that, but most of your high-density glass is going to be good quality stuff. And that's where your money is going in a spotting scope, is in the actual glass. Whereas in a rifle scope, a lot of the money was going towards the mechanism of the turrets being built well. In a spotting scope, you're actually putting that money into the glass itself. Another option that you can look at is the one that I actually prefer. I think this is a really good compromise because you have excellent quality at a decent value. This is made in Germany. It's Optolith, the S80 series. It's a compact. It's actually a pretty decent size optic, but they call it the compact, and it's got incredible German glass. It's really good stuff. It uses a compact HDF APO fluorite crystal glass. It enhances the color rendition and resolution to a real good, like the maximum level of performance. And this is used amongst a lot of different professionals and competition shooters. It's real good stuff, some of the best stuff they got in Europe. So this is what I use, and it does have the upgraded reticle, which is in the eyepiece. They have a 30 power eyepiece that is available in a mil scale reticle, which is oriented in a very intelligent way for long-range precision rifle fire. It's not too cluttered again. You have a long horizontal axis with hash marks explaining where your mills are, and you have some vertical oriented hash marks as well, which kind of allow you to make those determinations for fire correction, but it's not too cluttered as to obstruct your view of that very subtle bullet trace. So I do like the way the reticle is oriented in this. It does have nice fine adjustments available on it, and it's just a real good quality item. $2,500 to get started on one of these, and then you have to upgrade to the scaled reticle, which is the eyepiece, and I think they're around $400. For those of you looking for a Leupold, a lot of folks have asked me about these. I was taking a look at the GR spotting scope. This is kind of marketed for tactical applications. Real decent quality glass. This is a bit more expensive than some of your other options were. You do have a really smart designed reticle on this one as well. This is the impact reticle. Take a look at it here. You have a grid network located towards the bottom half of the optic. What you're going to do is you're going to situate your target in that grid network. The center of your glass is unobstructed by reticle noise, and so your bullet trace, which is very hard to detect, is going to be passing through clean glass above the target, coming down through its descending leg as it goes through its max ordinate there. And so you're going to hopefully spot that bullet trace, and when the bullet splashes down somewhere in that grid network, you're going to instantaneously know your exact correction value. Some of the limitations of a reticle like this, it's a little bit more noisy in that there's a lot more going on in this reticle. It's a little bit cluttered. If you have a subtle splash in a vegetated environment such as grass or something with a lot of bushes where you're not going to see a big dust signature, it might be a little bit hard to distinguish exactly where your bullet struck if your reticle is too noisy. So that's one of the limitations of reticle patterns such as this, is that this will work great in desert environments, arid environments, but if you have more vegetative cover, sometimes it's nice just to have clean glass in order to see those subtle splash signatures or even bullet trace signatures in some applications. However, this is a really cool design reticle. I think it's very smart, and it is very attractive from my perspective. I think it's a pretty cool setup. You can look at the classic Leupold Mark IV tactical spotting scope, and they have them available in a tactical milling reticle or a mill dot reticle. Both of those are good designs. Again, you don't want too much going on with your reticle, but these are a nice clean reticle. You just got a simple crosshairs, kind of like on a rifle scope, and you can orient those however you'd like so that you can optimize your chances of seeing the bullet trace. This is a good way to go. A little bit more money, but not a bad optic at all. If you've got even more money to spend, you can look at something like this Swarovski STR. And this is the STR 80, and it's a real decent piece of equipment. It's got crystal clear HD optics, impressive detail recognition, and it has a pretty smart designed reticle here. We have the minute of angle reticle and the MRAD reticle, and it's, again, kind of set up in the style of a rifle scope reticle, so it'll be pretty familiar to most of you who are doing this application. $3,700, real nice piece of equipment, but you're going to pay for it. I did get a chance to take a look at Night Force's spotting scope. A lot of folks were asking me about this as well. Night Force is pretty well known for their rifle scopes, which are decent rifle scopes. This particular scope, I could not find a reticle available for this scope. Maybe there is an eyepiece that you can upgrade to a reticle. So I would recommend this scope, possibly if it had a ranging reticle of some kind available for it. It has a focus ring that's very easy to manipulate. However, it is a bit crude, in my opinion, for super fine adjustments, which may be necessary for our application. Some folks might argue with me on that, but that's just my opinion. If I was looking at something like this, it's in the $3,000 range. If they had it available with a ranging reticle, that would be a serious contender. However, I probably wouldn't spend that much money if you couldn't find a ranging reticle, especially if you're going to be doing this application. So all in all, the main things you want to remember when you're shopping for a spotting scope is your application. You're going to want some kind of ranging reticle if you can get away with it, and you're going to want the best quality glass you can find. So your high density glass, your HD glass is something that's really going to be paying off in the long run here, because you're going to see that bullet trace a lot better. And make sure, again, that you have everything situated properly like we discussed in the prior videos. If you missed those, go back and check them out. Now, another thing I have to mention here is we're talking about different options for these spotting scopes is you're going to need a way to set these up in the field. A tripod is going to be a necessary piece of equipment. If you're operating from a static position, that is, you're going to drive to the shooting range, or you're going to drive up to your shooting spot, wherever that may be, and just kind of set up for the day and shoot, you can kind of get away with a lot of different options. There's a lot of decent camera tripods available that are really good values. You can go on eBay and find used TV camera tripods that they got from the TV station that are really overbuilt, heavy-duty fluid head tripods for a couple $100 or even maybe $100. And you want something pretty sturdy with a good fluid head that's tight where you can get fine adjustments. The problem with incredibly cheap tripods is that thing's going to be wiggling. And I may do with a very, very cheap tripods for a long time. However, you will be probably invoking magical incantations with the use of creative language to get these things to work. Sometimes they still don't work. The problem is you just got slop in the mechanisms. You got loose legs, you got a loose head, and it's going to be wiggling. And when you're talking about 30 power magnification, it's going to be kind of annoying, especially if you're trying to get that reticle centered on a target so that you can help your shooter adjust fire. It's going to make you a little bit frustrated. So you can get into a decent quality tripod for $50 even if you shop around properly. But you probably do want to get a hold of one and see how tight that head is. Any discernible play with your fingers on the head of that tripod and you're going to have major problems. So you're going to want it to seem absolutely tight when you're checking this thing out. Now, if you're doing real-world applications, we're going to be moving around a lot. If you're a soldier, or you're maybe even law enforcement, or if you're a hunter and you're going to be carrying around this equipment, now you're going to have a problem with these camera tripods. These things are bulky and they're heavy, and you're not going to want to lug that thing around. Now, the tripod that I probably recommend for operators who are going to be moving around a lot is this Rollitube design, and I got to test this out when I was in England last time, and we got out on the range there, and I did a full comprehensive review of this tripod. It's incredibly compact when you stow it away. You put it in a pouch on your belt, and then when you need to deploy it, The legs unroll like those snap bracelets and snap them together, and it's incredibly sturdy. They actually mount M240 machine guns on these things, and they're pretty stout. It has a precision targeting head available for it, which is something I'd strongly recommend getting if you're going to be using this for spotting, because you can get very precise with your reticle on the target in short order. This is a very good way to go. That it has a very, very well-designed head, and it's manufactured with very good quality. The feet are very rugged and aggressive, so you can get it firmly planted in the ground. And when you stow it away, the main thing I like about it is compact and light when you're moving it around. So if you missed a review on the Rollatube tripod, be sure to check that out, because that is incredibly slick. That's what a lot of the professional operators are really looking into now. The U.S. Defense Department is testing these with some certain people who are getting a lot of use out of them. There's a lot of forward observers and forward air controllers that use these for laser targeting at extreme distances, and it's just an incredible unit. A lot of paratroopers are really liking these as well because they're so light and easy to use. So if you're looking for the best equipment, I would recommend this tripod probably, because this is designed for a soldier who's going to be running around with it. A TV, camera, tripod, or a standard spotting scope tripod might not really be designed for running around, climbing up and down mountains with the tripod in mind. So that's probably your best option there. You can also look at these smaller monoculars, and there's a lot of these available. Most of these tactical monoculars are going to have a mil-scale reticle available in them. And what you have is just a low-power magnification. This particular one that I like to use is the Optolith 10x28R. It's made in Germany. It's got really good quality glass, but it fits in your shirt pocket. And if you're just going to be that third guy out there, or if you're busy carrying an M4 with an M203 and you can't really lug around a large spotting scope, this will get you the ability to help direct fire for your shooter. You have just a mil-scale reticle in there, and it's 10 power magnification, which is adequate for directing fire based on observation of bullet splash. It might be a little bit hard to discern bullet trace unless you're oriented exactly perfectly behind the shooter. But this is a really good, handy tool to have, and it's always good, too, to have a third spotter and a fourth spotter. So if it's more than just two guys out there, and you do have a spotter that is equipped with a full-bore spotting scope, it's nice just to have the option to be an extra spotter out there. And so if you have this in your kit or in your pocket, you can just whip it out and apply a second or third opinion to the matter and to help the spotter identify what's going on down there. So that's a real slick tool to have as well. They're available from lots of different companies. This is kind of the one I like because it's good quality glass. It's actually pretty inexpensive considering the quality, and is incredibly small, very compact. As we discussed earlier in this series, when you're talking about binoculars like the M22 binoculars made by Steiner, the military binoculars, the reticle in that is pretty crude. And it will kind of work. It's better than nothing in terms of correcting for rifle fire. However, the measurements are so crude that it's really designed for mortar fire correction and artillery. So when you talk about precision rifle fire applications, things like that are not really designed for it. However, that can still assist in just spotting where the impact was. So binoculars will work as well, but ideally, you're going to want to be situated with a decent quality spotting scope. So all in all, my recommendation would be in a spotting scope is, number one, you're going to want a reticle in it. Find a spotting scope with a reticle. Number two, you're going to want the best quality glass you can afford. If you can get into the HD glass, that high density glass, you won't regret it. And if you buy once, you only cry once. That's the saying a lot of folks do say, and it does hold true. It's a lot cheaper just to get something decent right away than to buy 10 really crappy items that when you add them up are more expensive than the decent one. So I do prefer spending my money on decent glass if I can afford it. A lot of times I'll spend a lot more on the glass than I did on the rifle. So that's my advice on shopping for a spotting scope. If you have any questions or anything to add, any other experience, I did have the opportunity to travel all over the world and see lots of different options out there. There's a lot of really neat stuff available, and everyone kind of has their pet piece of equipment, and there's nothing wrong with that. I'm not poo-pooing anyone's equipment. These are just my personal observations.
But she hits me, disassembles my leg. So I went to the doctor and he gave me a leg. Now she waits, slumber, just dreaming, pretty bad. Hope that she kills instead of leaving the name. Though she's a minefield, she'll watch your body from your soul. Minefield, leave a big smoking hole.